Thank you, Angel. I'd like to take a moment. My name is Nil Sorama, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Land Use Landmarks and Planning Committee. Today is April 12th, and it is roughly 6:35. I'd like to welcome everyone. I will be chairing tonight's meeting in the place of Chair Jason Villanueva, who unfortunately cannot be with us tonight. Angel?
Yes, I'm gonna call. Move this thing forward. Yep.
Some ground rules that I'd like to go over quickly to make a more efficient meeting. No one may speak until granted the floor. Community Board 11 members, if you have a question about board business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand via Zoom. If you click the participants icon, the participants panel should appear and you should find the raise hand function there. If you still have technical difficulty, you may click the chat icon and relay your difficulty to the staff. The chat function should not be used for CB11 business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties you are having or to state in writing information, such as an email address that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. Please keep your questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. Members of the public, if you have a question or comment about the subjects on the agenda, please raise your hand through Zoom and wait to be recognized. I cannot stress that enough for committee members and public. Please raise your hand for a more efficient meeting so we can hear everyone. So with that, I am going to call the meeting to order. Angel, can you conduct the roll call?
Certainly. Committee members, when I call your name, please answer present. Kenneth Crouch.
Present.
Jessica Elliott.
Present.
Jessica Morris. Nilsa Arama.
Present.
Beverly Pabon.
Present.
Vinny Torres.
Present.
Jason Villanueva is excused. Devan Cronshaw is excused. Candy Vasquez.
Candy sent a message that she may be joining late as she has her grandkids are visiting and she's not at home.
Got it. We have quorum.
Thank you so much. With that, I'm wondering if the committee members had a chance to look at the agenda. As if you have noticed the agenda, we are having a presentation and discussion tonight from the Mount Sinai Klingenstein Clinical Center, as well as a presentation of development alternatives for a planned ECF project at the School of Cooperative Education. We will not be having the 244 East 106th Street Share NYC presentation tonight. That will be happening at full board. If everyone has reviewed the agenda, if there are no objections to the agenda, I'd like to adopt the agenda as submitted and written. Are there any motions? And well, are there any objections to the agenda? Seeing none, we will adopt the agenda. Angel, were meeting minutes put on?
No, we do not. We do not. We do not have minutes for the last month meeting. We'll circulate them at the next month.
Okay. All right. And with that, I see that Beverly Pavone has the hand up. So Beverly, can you ask
Yes,
your question?
Yes, I'm just making sure that the 244 we're not doing tonight.
We are not doing that tonight. They will be presenting at full board and at the public hearing.
Okay, then. Thank you so very much for that clarification.
You're welcome. Next, Angel. Okay, so on March
I can read through these if you'd like.
Great, thank you.
Sure. On March 27th, the Department of City Planning certified land use applications for the proposed 244 East 106th Street Sharon YC project that was just referenced a moment ago. The Community Board's 60-day review period began on April 5th and must be completed by June 5th. A public hearing on these applications will be held during CB11's full board meeting on April 25th. The next meeting of this committee is scheduled for May 10th. The development team and their partners for the Sharon YC project have been invited and have confirmed that they'll be attending other committees as well, the Housing Committee, Human Services Committee, and Economic Development, and one more, I forget. The Youth and Education Committee. In May, once the dates are confirmed, and I have confirmed those additions with the respective committee chairs, we will update this committee and the rest of the board.
Thank you, Angel. Beverly, I see your hand is still up. Is that an old hand or do you have a question? Oh, thank you, Beverly. Next, Angel.
I don't have any information on it.
No. Okay, so as we have just really informed you that the presentations are having a full board, if there are no other informational updates that the committee would like to bring up, Jessica Morris, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Nelson. Just a point of clarification, and I'm not sure any Angel would be able to clarify. We were invited to tour a transitional housing project downtown that would be similar in kind, though not exactly the same as the Share NYC project that happened a couple of weeks ago. Is that correct, Angel? I'm correlating the projects, the site visit that Jason, myself, and you took up with, and the project that is going to come before full board, Share NYC.
Right,
the
Ali Forty Center is the social service partner on the Sharon YC project. That's going to be before the board, and we had the opportunity to tour an existing facility that they operate down in the East Village, the Bay Arthur residence. The one difference, though, even though we did learn a bit, about the way that they operate, is that facility in the East Village is transitional housing, and the one that's being proposed as part of the Sharon YC project in our district is going to be supportive housing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Andrew, for the clarification. There are no informational updates. So with that, can we move along, Andrew, to presentations and discussions? Okay. The first presentation, as you see on the screen, is a presentation regarding a BSA application 897B5BZ, Mount Sinai Klingenstein Clinical Center. This application requests an amendment to a previously granted special permit and variance in order to renovate the existing Klingenstein Clinical Center for an expanded oncology program. The application would allow an increase in the degree of non-complying lot coverage pursuant to an amendment to the variance and setback pursuant to an amendment to the special permit. The project will be at the Mount Sinai Hospital and Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai, 1440-68 Madison Avenue, 220 East 101st Street, 1180 through 1198 Fifth Avenue, Block 1604, Lots 6, 13, and 17. The applicant is Venable LLP. The owner is Mount Sinai Hospital. Do we have those who will be presenting on behalf of this presentation?
Yes, they're on the call, and Brad Beckstrom, who we all know is going to lead the charge on this.
Okay, so with that, let's start the presentation, please.
Okay. Can you hear me? I think we're a little bit of a technical issue. Hold on.
We're getting feedback.
Is that better?
No. Is someone are you using the phone in addition to a computer that may be bouncing back and forth?
Can you hear us now? Let's just go with my
Yes.
iPad. Can we disconnect that for now? Give us one
Yes,
second,
we-
guys.
we-
We're all in one location.
Yeah, we can
you
hear
hear
you
it?
clearly now, Brad. Mhm.
Okay. There. Okay. I think, can you finally hear us? Sorry.
Yes.
Okay. Apologies about that. Sorry, Nelson. And thank you, everybody, for your patience. And these Zoom meetings are good, but sometimes the technology can still be a challenge, even after 3 years. So we're very excited about what we're presenting tonight, and it's good to see everybody. First, just a quick introduction with me, and we will be relatively quick tonight and have questions at the end. But joining me from our end, and they won't say anything at this point, but we have Doug Carney, our Chief Facilities Officer at Mount Sinai. We have Dr. Cardi Smith, who is the CMO for the Tisch Cancer Hospital. We have Hillary Asrot with Venable, who will be doing the most of the presentation. We have Jill Lerner, our architect with KPF. Mike Delaney with Driscoll, who is the project manager. And I think those are our key folks. So several of us may be jumping in at different times. Before we really got into the issue of what we're seeking the zoning variances for, I thought it would be quickly just to highlight the partnership that we have with East Harlem. Obviously, Mount Sinai has been here for a couple of 100 years. We have a longstanding relationship with the community, and it's something that we want to continue to expand on and grow. But we actually pulled some data that I thought was very fascinating. So I'm going to read through it really quickly in our PowerPoint, and I'm happy to circulate this later. But first, regarding hiring, local hiring, Mount Sinai, as you know, is the largest employer in East Harlem with over 1,900 employees living in East Harlem. Last year, in 2022, Mount Sinai hired 404 East Harlem residents. The 1029 zip code is the largest catchment area of any group of our employees. And we partner with community organizations, many of them East Harlem based, such as Strive International, Positive Workforce, and others, to hire local residents for both permanent and construction jobs. Regarding,
They should advance the slides.
oh, Hillary, can you advance the slides?
It is advanced on my screen.
Okay, it's just an issue at our end. Okay, apologies at our end. Okay, good. As long as it is, everybody can see it.
Can everyone else see the MS East Harlem partnership slide or no?
No.
We can see the Mount Sinai ISMMS application. That's your first slide.
Okay,
So they are not advancing.
yeah, we'll see. I don't know, Angel, can you advance them at your end?
I can share from my end. If you just give me a minute, I'll do
Okay,
that.
yep.
Yeah.
Sorry, everybody, about this.
Yeah, I can stop the share because it is advancing on my computer, so.
Good catch, Jill. Thank you.
You're welcome.
His computer and just turn on audio here, but keep the audio coming out of this. Oh, I got it. Oh, okay. That's fine.
Okay, it looks like it might be coming up there. Okay, then if you can go to page 2, Angel. Thank you, thank you. Okay, there we go. Okay, if everybody can see that. And again, we're happy to circulate this. Second set of data regarding local businesses. We actually spend annually 4.5 million purchasing goods and services from East Harlem-based businesses. I think everybody's also aware of affordable housing. We actually on 102nd and 5th Avenue have a unit with 47 affordable units, and half of those are dedicated, if that's the right word, to residents of East Harlem. I think it's called the community preference. Regarding the delivery of actual healthcare, since the onset of COVID, we've administered more than 11,000 vaccinations, COVID vaccinations to East Harlem residents. Our Adolescent Health Center cares for more than 2,000 East Harlem adolescents. Nearly 1,200 East Harlem residents obtain inpatient care at Mount Sinai each year. 35,000 East Harlem residents get outpatient care at Mount Sinai, and annually more than 12,000 East Harlem residents receive their emergency care at Mount Sinai.
I have to go to the next sheet. If you could advance the.
Oh, I'm
next sheet,
sorry.
please.
Yes, there you
Thank
go.
you.
Sorry. And then finally, Mount Sinai, as I'm using the word, as an economic engine. Mount Sinai recently relocated its nursing school to 126 in Lexington. The school has 325 nursing students and more than 35 full-time employees. We are a partner in the Proton Beam Center, located obviously in East Harlem on the far east side, bringing jobs and state-of-the-art cancer care to the community. Mount Sinai has clinics, offices, residential buildings, and research space at more than 40 East Harlem locations. Not all of those are clinical, but we have more than 40 East Harlem locations. And finally, more than 20,000 Mount Sinai employees work in each Harlem East Day. And again, spending dollars locally at restaurants, coffee shops, bodegas, and other locations. So that was just some data that I thought was worth sharing. Obviously, the real purpose is to talk about the zoning variances in the cancer hospital. I'm going to turn it over briefly to Dr. Smith. She's going to quickly just highlight what the cancer hospital is and what the project is about. And then from there, Hillary will take it and walk through the zoning variances. So Hillary, once Cardi's done, go ahead and jump in.
If you could just advance to the next slide, please.
So the Mount Sinai Tisch Cancer Hospital, currently right now, more than 1,800 East Harlem residents receive cancer care at Mount Sinai. As we are planning for the Tisch Cancer Hospital, we envision that this will include 72 renovated single patient inpatient oncology beds, which is really the future for how we're going to be providing inpatient cancer care. It will include ICU specific cancer beds. We will be able to expand new novel oncology therapies. It will focus on enhanced patient and caregiver experiences with spa, salon, dining, and respite services that will be focused on patients and caregivers. We will have the opportunity to expand our procedure clinics and offerings, thereby increasing the volume that we're able to do. We will have our oncology urgent care unit in this space. And so we will have the ability to help our oncology patients avoid the ED by receiving their care in this oncology specific unit. And we'll have enhanced clinical training opportunities. And the construction timeline is currently slated to be around 2023 to 2027.
Hi, everyone. Hillary Atzrat-Hamburg from Venable Outside Land Use Council to Mount Sinai. As was discussed earlier, the waivers that we are requesting from the BSA are waivers for an amendment to a previously granted special permit and variance. The amendment to the height and setback of the building would be pursuant to the special permit, and the amendment to the lot coverage would be pursuant to a variance. Additionally, Mount Sinai is requesting a modification of a landscaping condition, which was included in the 1986 approval. This condition specifically required landscaping on certain terraces of the Guggenheim Pavilion that front on Mount Sinai parcels across the street. And those areas that were requested as landscaping are only accessible from patient rooms, making it infeasible to have landscaping there. So as part of this application, we're also requesting a waiver of that condition. Next slide, please. The waivers are requested at 4 specific areas of the project. First, the lobby. Second, the southerly cantilever. Third, the infill of 2 existing setbacks on the building. And fourth, at the new facade that would be constructed. The variance would allow for an additional 943 square feet of lot coverage, and 182 of that square feet would be at the lobby entrance. 180 would be at the cantilever, which would create patient sky gardens, which would be beautiful waiting rooms and respite rooms for patients who are experiencing long stays, and 581 square feet at the facade. It's important to note at the facade that the new facade would extend 11.5 inches off of the existing building. If it extended only 8 feet off of the building, it would be as of right and a permitted obstruction. It's really only that additional 3.5 feet or inches, I'm sorry, that inches that we need the waiver for. And that 3.5 inches is due to energy efficiency and noise ordinance standards that are being put into the facade. And we'll discuss that more when we get to the slide. The special permit, which is highlighted the area in red, would provide for modest increases to the height and setback of the building. The 2 existing setbacks on the building would be constructed with additional floor area to allow for full floor plates. And additionally, the facade would go the entire front of the building, which would also require a waiver due to that 3.5-inch increase, which makes the facade a non-permitted obstruction. Next slide, please. As you can see from the attached building program stack diagram, the TCH floors would be constructed on floors 1 through 5. And this is an important programming point as it allows the oncology functions to be grouped together. So dedicated oncology staff could be in close proximity. The upper floors will consist of cardiac ICU space, future acuity adaptable beds, and a neuro ICU. And each program is concentrated on a separate floor above the TCH floors. The program stack was designed to work seamlessly with staff training and existing bridges that connect the KCC building to the Guggenheim Pavilion and the Annenberg building, which allows for the most efficient transfer of patients and staff between the buildings. And additionally, for context, you'll see in red the facade screen, height and setback waiver, and the very minimal nature of it. It barely goes into the sky exposure plane and adds only inches to the setback area there. Next slide, please. Now, as Mount Sinai and the Icahn School of Medicine are educational institutions, the entities are subject to BSA programmatic needs deference when it comes to review of the variance, meaning the requested relief must relate to Mount Sinai's programs. And the new facade is important to Mount Sinai's programs as it creates a more unified campus aesthetic and also addresses crucial energy preservation features. The KCC's existing brick facade is original to the building and lacks energy preservation features that are important for compliance with Local Law 97 and also the current noise and acoustical requirements. In an as-of-right scenario, as I mentioned before, the KCC facade would have to be under 8 inches off the building, and the required technology could not be put in place with those requirements. So these 2 diagrams show, again, that this is a very small waiver for a very big impact for energy savings and acoustical performance. Next slide, please. The cantilever, which would be subject to both the special permit and variance, would facilitate the construction of important patient respite areas referred to as the sky gardens. These areas would be bright and airy for patient use. Many of the patients who will be treated at the TCH will experience stays of up to 45 days after undergoing treatments such as bone marrow transplants. Numerous studies have found that providing areas outside of a patient's room that are light and airy and have natural features are beneficial for mental health and physical healing during these long-term stays. Without the cantilever, the light and air in these spaces would be reduced, and 436 square feet of patient meditation and seating would be eliminated in addition to the natural light reduction. Next slide, please. In terms of the setback renovation, excuse me, which would be subject to the special permit, the infill of the KCC's existing setbacks would facilitate the creation of patient respite rooms and 13 additional patient beds. Granting this minimal waiver, the area highlighted in red actually shows the area of the setback waiver, results in duplicative floor plates across the KCC and the creation of these 13 additional beds. Next slide, please. The lobby entrance renovation, which would be 182 square feet subject to the variance, would be a very modest increase to the lobby footprint to create a more welcoming entrance and more appropriately protect patients and staff from the elements when entering and leaving the building. Without the waiver, the first floor would be reduced in zoning square feet by 71 square feet, and the exterior overhang would also be reduced. And it's important to note that both this lobby entrance renovation and the entirety of the facade are all within Mount Sinai's property line. So no revocable consents or other approvals would be needed. It's limited to the BSA application. Next slide, please. Lastly, comparing the proposed building to an as-of-right scenario, which is one of the requirements for the variance. In the event the waivers were not granted, the building's bulk would remain in the existing condition. So our as-of-right scenario is the existing KCC building. But unfortunately, the program stack would have to be substantially modified. This would be especially impactful and detrimental to the 5th floor, which is planned as an oncology ICU floor. The oncology ICU floor was designed to be a closed unit that would solely be dedicated to oncology patients. But in the event the setback waivers and other relief weren't granted, all of the upper floor programming would have to be put onto the 5th floor. And unfortunately, it looks like on the slide that's being projected, I think perhaps if we scroll down a little bit more, you'll be able to see the as of right versus the proposed. Oh no, it looks like it got cut off in the PDF. Apologies for that. But the as of right scenario shows that multiple programs would have to be put on the 5th floor. So you would have the neuro ICU on the 5th floor, a portion of it, and you would also have a portion of the cardiac ICU on the 5th floor. And that creates staffing inefficiencies. You lose the closed unit, and you also lose 13 beds in this scenario. So it is extremely detrimental to the program to lose these areas and have to consolidate them on the 5th floor. Next slide, please.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about this a little bit. This is, if you would, this is Jill Lerner, the architect and from KPF. And so this is the existing facade, and I'm sure you're really familiar with it. And because you go by, because it's in your neighborhood, and it's been there since the it was designed in the late 50s, completed in the mid 60s. So it's been there quite a while, and it's really at the end of its useful life, I would say, and certainly not compliant in any way with, you know, if you were to build a new building today, it's really not compliant with a high performance facade or any of the energy requirements, or as Hillary said, the noise requirements and so forth. So while we're renovating the inside, it just makes good sense to renovate the exterior as well. So it's really in better shape for the next 100 years, right? And if you go to the next slide, Hillary, would you like to say something about that?
Sure, thanks, Jill. So as you'll see from this illustrative rendering, this building is much more in character with the other Mount Sinai buildings and with the community in general, with the materials that are used. As I'm sure the Land Use Committee knows, that the community character is one of the findings for a variance. And so the architectural team was really thoughtful in the design of this building and making sure that it creates a unified campus context, but also relates to the community more generally. And as you can see, there's great light and air to the cantilever areas that we previously described. And this minimal waiver for the facade provides all of the benefits for energy efficiency, noise attenuation measures, and also this really beautiful community context.
Yeah, if I might add, Hillary, thank you. Just one other note, that the building is not getting any increase in height. So it's the same height that it is today. It's just filling out those two corner areas, as Hillary said, to make a very efficient floor plate on the inside, and really creating a strong statement at the front door. One of the things about the Mount Sinai campus today is there are many front doors as you walk around the campus. And so we wanted to make it very clear that there's no confusion where the entry is. It'll be lit at night and very welcoming and very obvious. We're also screening the mechanical equipment up at the top of the building to sort of complete the building facades.
Would be acoustical too, right? The screens.
Yes.
Yeah.
and acoustical treatment at the facade screens.
Next slide.
Questions?
And we are happy
At the
to
end.
address any questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation. On behalf of the whole committee, I want to thank you all for coming and explaining your proposed project and the changes within. I'm assuming that we will be getting a copy of this presentation for our use. And with that, I just had a quick question in terms of the landscaping changes that are in the Guggenheim on the terraces of patients. Could you explain in terms of the initial agreement for that? Why agree then and why the changes now?
Sure, happy to explain that. So these were 1986 approvals, which that is the time at which the approvals were granted and this condition was included. And as you can imagine, as time has gone on with COVID, et cetera, the ability to have people go through patient rooms and get to terraces has dramatically changed. It's infeasible to really do that with current patient care standards. So, over the evolution of time, it's just no longer a safe option for patients and a workable option for Mount Sinai.
Thank you. So that just a quick follow-up. So in terms of the terraces, are those terraces going to still be used but without the landscaping element, or is it just going to be decorative and not used at all?
So the terraces are not utilized at this point in time. They're no one goes out to them. They're stone dusted areas, and the terraces face other Mount Sinai buildings. So they aren't providing, a beautiful feature to others that is now going to be taken away.
Okay, thank you so much. I just wanted clarity in my mind as I imagined this project. I see that our district manager, Angel Muscane, has his hand up. So Angel?
Excellent. So just two quick things. One, to your question about the presentation, the Sinai team did provide us a copy of the presentation that's currently on our website. So thank you for that to them. And then secondly, a quick question for Hillary. Has this application been put on the calendar at BSA? Do you have a hearing date?
No, it has not been put on the calendar at the BSA yet. We are currently awaiting the notice of comments from the BSA, which they have indicated we should expect in the next week or two.
Thank you, Hillary.
Okay, thank you. Angel, do you have any more questions? Because your hand's still up. Okay.
No, I'm a slow lowerer of a hand.
That's okay. I never remember how to put it up, let alone put it down. Jessica Morris?
Thank you, Nilsa. I think I have 3 questions, and if I can just ask the first one, get a response, and then ask the other 2, might be helpful. The first one is, what is your budget for this project?
Hillary or Doug Carney, are you on? Can you answer that, the total project cost?
Yes, I'll give you an approximation, Jessica. We generally don't like to discuss budget publicly because it puts us at a competitive disadvantage with the bidding of the subcontractors. But the project is well over $200 million.
$200 million for an additional 900 square feet.
No, it's not that simple, Jessica. It's $200 million for essentially an all-new building.
The whole building will be gut renovated, basically, not gut renovated, but the entire building will be renovated.
All but 2 floors will be gut renovated, and all new mechanical systems, all new air handlers, all new electrical systems, upgraded elevators. It's a very extensive renovation to the existing building.
Thank you for the clarification. That makes a lot more sense. I appreciate very much that you started with how good a neighbor Mount Sinai is here in East Harlem. I think that is incredibly impressive, and what you're asking for is, as far as our support with regard to additional space and variance, is very small. That's understandable, and I think Doug, I appreciate your willingness to share the ballpark and clarify the total scope of the project, in addition to the ask, which is to support the additional square footage, along with, and this is kind of the question. I am assuming that the facade renovation is in line with local law 97 compliance, and it seems like the additional wall section, the additional 3.5 inches, is in line with where the city is going for as far as zoning for zero carbon. So you're just a little bit ahead of the game. Is that correct? And then my second question is with regard to this building is in the heart of a super block, and the urban design from the outside doesn't necessarily scream inviting as it relates to a 99th Street traverse, 100 across. So, I understand there are limits to scope and what you're trying to achieve in what you're here to ask us for, and in this particular part of the project, but where, we do represent, our neighbors across the street and beyond. I just do want to ask that question, and I know that it's something that you're thinking about, and I hope that there are, and I'm sure there are, much more than pretty trees in a rendering planned for a continued community engagement in the work that you're doing. So question about the facade and alignment with zoning for zero carbon, which you seem to be ahead of the game, and question about overall urban design intentions with regard to the project plan.
Brad, do you want me to take a crack at these?
Yep, go ahead. Yep, please, Doug.
So Jessica, you are spot on as it relates to the thickness of the facade. There are two primary requirements that Hillary mentioned. One is the energy code, local law 97, and this building is completely uninsulated. So it is, for those of you who may have older homes, what that story means. So transforming it from essentially an uninsulated building with very poor windows to an extraordinarily high performance facade that KPF and the Driscoll team have been working together to design is going to be extraordinary from an energy perspective. And I agree with your assessment. I think it will be cutting edge. The other thing that's new for this building is the FGI guidelines, which are the CMS federal guidelines for what a reimbursable hospital room has to meet from a facility standpoint, now require acoustic separation from external environments if those external environments have sound pressures above a certain level. And that's actually required us to make the glass multiple layers and substantially thicker than the 1-inch insulating glass that we would have seen even a year or two ago. So those are the two things that are driving the wall thickness to be substantially thicker than you might have expected. I'll pause there in case you have any follow-up questions on the wall thickness question.
No, I think it's more the note that it's a full gut is, I think, what we really needed to hear. Thank you.
And we need Jessica to talk about the neighbors. Obviously, we're going to be reaching out to Carver and updating them on this as well too. But when you talk about neighbors across the street, you alluded to.
And then your other two questions, I agree with your assessment completely. You and I have had other conversations, not ex parte on this matter, but through our role in the AIA. I think this is a good first step for Mount Sinai citizenship along Madison Avenue from 98th to 103rd. And you may or may not know that we're undertaking a comprehensive facility master plan for all of our system assets, including this campus, that will look at all of the competing interests associated with arrival and public realm and placemaking in the urban environment, and obviously engage with the housing authority folks across the street and other stakeholders, including this group, about what that should look like. It's a little asynchronous. I would love to have that in hand already and have a comprehensive plan that I was following. But one of the things that I've realized that this project can do is set a tone. And as was alluded in this meeting, there are several different nodes that are points of arrival for Mount Sinai. And that's not unique to an academic medical center or to Mount Sinai. But if you think of it like an airport, the good ones and the bad ones, make it easy to find the specific point of arrival that you're looking for. And we've been beginning that conversation, and we think that we can create a unique point of arrival and node for the cancer hospital. And then, and I think that'll be okay. What we still need to define are what are the unifying elements that'll be true for all the nodes, and the wayfinding associated with that. That's work yet to be done, not part of this project. And then the last piece, and I agree with your assessment about how it invites you into Ross Park. We understand that Ross Park is my words, my view is currently an underutilized asset for both Mount Sinai and the community. It's on my agenda for looking at, obviously beyond the scope of this project. But then the other thing I'd like you to know is we've, through KPF, Jill and I interviewed with Loida, a very small minority-owned firm from Brooklyn called Soft Firm. And we're really leaning towards, we haven't finalized the deal yet, but we like their work. They were published in Metropolis magazine, you may have seen it. And we're really looking towards engaging them for this, relatively small, but incredibly high importance slice of public realm. So I don't know if that satisfies all the concerns you have, but I think we're trying to address all of the opportunities that come with this important project.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you so much. In the interest of time, I see that we have two hands. So I'm going to go first to Beverly Pavone so she can ask her question. Beverly?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mount Sinai Hospital and staff and architects for the presentation. My two questions is quick. In regards to the variance in the special permit, I'm hoping that this, I know that this building, once it's finished, will stand for 100 years or more. But just in case you guys or the future people of this development wants to take down this building and build something else, with these variants and special permit carry to a new building? And my second question is, since you said it's a gut rehab, the building is vacant now, or is it in use now?
It is utilized now. It is in use. And
okay. So my question is that how will whatever you're using it for with patient cares and stuff, where would you put the patients while you're doing the gut rehabilitation? And for the people who are working in the community, working there, that are from the community, will anybody be losing their job temporarily or permanently while this is going on?
Okay,
and those
I'll
are my
ask
questions.
Dr. Smith. I think we'll address most of that because a lot of that's clinical, but a couple of things really quick, Beverly. Number one, no staff would lose their job as a result of this. There'll be no layoffs, permanent, temporary, or anyway. Obviously, staffing is a major challenge, so no jobs will be lost. And then one of the reasons the project is going to take so long to build is because it is complex, because it is currently used for patient care, and it's going to be done in multiple phases. I'm oversimplifying a little bit. So we minimize the impact on temporary loss of patient beds. But Cardi, can you take it from there, explaining a little further? But I think that's, Beverly, really the short answer to your questions.
Yeah, and I think so in terms of the what's going to happen with patients is the work in the interior will be done in phased sections, and of the current patient care sections that exist there now, Some of the patient care, for example, acute rehab, will be moving to one of our other existing hospitals and one of our other campuses. So we will be moving patient care services to either other hospitals or we will be moving it to other locations within our currently existing hospital. So that's how patient care will be handled.
Okay, thank
And
you.
Beverly, to address your question regarding the variance and special permit and whether or not they would apply to future owners. Let's say that someone was to come in and purchase this building. It would have to remain a hospital use in order for the variance and special permit to remain. If there was going to be some sort of change in use, then that person would have to go back to the Board of Standards and Appeals and get an amendment and show why the variances and special permits should still exist because they are based upon Mount Sinai's specific program. So someone could not come in and simply convert this to a completely different use and rely upon the variance and special permit.
Okay, thank you all so very much.
Thank you, Beverly.
Vinnie Torres?
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. So thank you again for that presentation. Just for full disclosure, I will be recusing myself as this will be an action item, voting item at some point. But I would like to mention a few things relevant to the project. Certainly as it relates to local hiring efforts, Mount Sinai has clearly demonstrated on some of the previous projects a comprehensive approach to bringing on board locals from the community. We've had a tremendous success rate on some of their projects, unlike some of the struggles we've seen on so many other projects in our community. So I just want to just point that out. There's been a firm commitment on this project by Mount Sinai and its construction manager and builder to, again, follow in suit with that, and super excited about the opportunity to connect local residents to this project in so many ways. So just want to just point that out. And just one question on the project timeline. And I know we may have mentioned this before, but just for further clarity, what does the start commencement date looks like, and how long will the project timeline run for construction?
I'll do the high level, and then if Doug, if you want to add anything. Actually, later this year, some of the internal infrastructure work will begin, Vinny. But the true construction on the main renovation itself is slated to begin probably second quarter of 24. And then Doug, that's about a 4-year timeline, right? Before it's completed. So it'll be the end of 27 or early 28 before completed. Do I have that right?
That's right. We expect to complete the north half of the building in about half that time, sometime in 2025. And to the question earlier, that we know of today, there are 15 major phases to the project as a result of the clinical needs. And then the full building will be finished, as you say, in 2027.
And Vinny, we look forward to working with you on the local hiring. So thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay, I don't see. I'm going to look if there are any questions from our attendees. I want to thank you for your in-depth presentation. As you know, we're the Land Use Committee, and so we are charged with a specific mandate, which is to look at the projects and come up with consensus and voting and doing our thing. Economic development sits in the Economic Development Committee. And any other facets of your project that touches other committees, we would ask that you reach out to those committees and at least let them know how it would affect theirs. For instance, economic development was mentioned in here, and while we always ask about economic development, in reality, that is not our purview. Our purview is the land use portion of it and how that affects the community. It is my understanding, as you mentioned, that you are not you're not calendared right now with BSA. And you may be hearing something within the next 2 weeks. Angel, in light of that, should we take a vote on this tonight? Or should we wait until they are calendared?
Since it hasn't been calendared, we want to, keep to our new practice of hearing a presentation 1 month and voting the following. So since we have the time, we should do that. I suggest we do that the same here.
Okay, so thank you. Thank you, Angel. I thought the same, but because I am covering and not the chair of the committee, I thought that I would ask the question. So in light of that, and with the explanation of our district manager, Angel Muscane, we will take into account everything you've said. We will look for if there are any clarifying questions that we need. We will definitely reach out. If you feel that there are other committees you should make a presentation for, so that they can give us input as well, as we are the lead committee, we would welcome that. And then next month, in next month's meeting, we will bring this up again and we will then take the appropriate action. If you have any questions for me right now, I'll feel happy to answer in any limited way. And if there isn't, again, I want to thank you for the presentation. I want to thank Mount Sinai for always being a good partner. The work that you do in this community is evident. And, we can't say enough, you are a partner that we can always count on. So if you have no questions for me, I would like to thank you for coming. And like I said, we will look at this at next month's meeting and then bring it up for further action.
Sounds good. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate your support and your time.
Thank you all. With that, we're going to move to the second presentation. Angel, is Mr. Lovan de Volk here? And if he is, then he will give the presentation of the development alternatives for the planned ECF project at the School of Co-op Tech Educational campus on East 96th Street.
Yes, Nelson Lowe is on the call.
Hello, Mr. Van der Valk.
Yes.
From Carnegie Hill Neighbors. Thank you for coming. And you have attended our meetings before, and you've always been very generous with your comments and also very complimentary to the work of this committee. So I want to welcome you here tonight, and we look forward to hearing your presentation of development alternatives. So with that, I will cede the floor to you.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Chair Orama. I greatly appreciate your comments, and also I greatly appreciate the opportunity for coming before you and presenting the Marx Brothers Playground alternative that we had proposed a year ago in May to the mayor. And we had sort of been negligent in not coming before the community board just to give you an update of what our thinking was. And I think this is an apt opportunity to do that. I wonder if I could ask Angel, I sent by email a synopsis of what George James had prepared for us in terms of the technical features of our alternative and what has been approved.
Was that sent today, Lo?
Yeah, I just sent it about 20 minutes ago, or half an hour ago.
Hold on, let me. I haven't been looking at my email, but I
Yeah,
will
it
check
has
it.
3 or 6 slides.
And while you're getting ready, Angel, if I can just say a couple of words
Yeah,
about
sure.
this. So just for the sake of disclosure, Carnegie Hill Neighbors is a client of mine, just like Community Board 11 is. You're both 2 of my longest standing clients. The way the agreement with the Community Board works is that I do not work on any applications that could come before this committee, but after the committee or after the board votes on them, I am free to work with other entities. And so I have worked with Carnegie Hill Neighbors on this, but considering you're both my clients, I am going to be quiet and not comment on any of this stuff.
Well, I greatly value George's comments, and I think it should be noted that we both independently arrived at George James as being a great consultant, and you know, and I'm also speaking on behalf of the coalition that formulated the alternative, and that coalition consists of 4 organizations: the Municipal Arts Society, headed by President Elizabeth Goldstein, Civitas, which is where Jim Tripp and Sharon Pope have made great contributions towards this project. Friends of the Upper East Side, formerly the executive director was Rachel Levy, and now it's Anna Markham, and Carnegie Hill Neighbors, myself as president of Carnegie Hill Neighbors. So I'm really speaking on behalf of the coalition, and the coalition formulated the alternative to what was being proposed and what had been approved in the summer of 2017. And if we could advance the slide to the next, and yes, so this is the layout. The extreme left is what is currently the layout of the block. You'll see in green, of course, is the playground, and then in blue is Co-op Tech. And the plan, of course, was to replace Co-op Tech with a new school and allow, with the developer selected, allow a tower to be built. And so the original plan was actually only to do Co-op Tech and build a tower. But then the council member wanted to enhance the project by adding the 2 high schools. And for that reason, unlike the original plan, which would preserve the playground as parkland, for that reason, they needed additional development rights. And so that is why the playground became a point of contention. And in the presentations to the Community Board 11, the president of ECF, the Educational Construction Fund, Jennifer Maldonado, pointed out that as an abundance of caution, while they considered the playground not to be parkland, out of an abundance of caution, they said that it may be parkland. But these 2 alternatives were never fully developed. It was just assumed for a practical matter that the playground could be used as parkland. And one of the surprises that comes later after the state has approved this is that, and which was never discussed at the community board, was that if you convert a playground to parkland, then you are required to replace it in kind with other parkland elsewhere, and that's known as Section 2. I'll discuss that further later. Now moving to the other, the third diagram map. It shows the playground is now, and this is our proposed alternative, the playground, which we call scenario 5. The playground would be restored as parkland. It would be shifted to First Avenue, which we think is fair, rather than being hemmed in by 2 sets of tall buildings. And this will get more sunlight. And because the 2 high schools had been eliminated, we knew about that when we proposed this to the mayor a year ago. We show in blue on the left only Co-op Tech and then the 2 towers. And now go to please the next slide. That's the original proposal, and you see that the original tower, because they're using the development rights of the playground, the tower is some 700 feet tall, and you see the blue next to the tower is Co-op Tech, and those are both along Second Avenue, and then the 2 high schools would be along First Avenue. That's the approved plan. okay, that we're trying to address and improve upon because of the new developments that the high schools will no longer be a part of the project. Okay, next slide, please. This is what we would propose as possible, and what we proposed to the as alternative to the mayor. We would the playground is now restored as parkland and offers no development rights. The blue is now an expanded footprint for Co-op Tech, but not in terms of square feet. And the tower becomes two twin towers bordering Second Avenue, and their height is much lower. It's some 350 feet to the roof. But it does offer affordable 775 units, of which about 193 are affordable housing. So there is still a substantial residential contribution to this project, in addition to saving the park. And I'll read some of the benefits that we saw in our letter to the mayor. The alternative projects, Marx Brothers Playground as mapped parkland on the block, rather than permanently replacing parkland elsewhere. So we keep the baseball field in this part of our community. And even though Carnegie Hill Neighbors is in Community Board 8, I can tell you that we all know that both Community Board 8 and Community Board 11 benefit from this playground. It is true that ECF has claimed that the playground would be restored and there would be a playground there, although it would not be parkland. And the reason why we're fighting to have the playground reverted to parkland is that anything, a playground space like that, which is not parkland, can be developed at any time. And if the playground as currently proposed, the air rights are sacrificed, we know that there are plenty of air rights left that a development could occur, which could be substantial. So the temptation would always be there. Memories fade. And the great thing about parkland is you have to go through the state alienation process. And that really is one of the great protection for the city for all parks. And we want that protection for this playground. The second item we mentioned is that now Co-op Tech has a prime location. It benefits from the light coming in and overlooking the playground, and this is very much in context with the community. Alternative to the original RFP, yes, I might mention as I mentioned earlier, the original RFP had only envisaged the Co-op Tech and the residential tower or towers, but not the high schools. It will still, this alternative will still generate almost 200 units of affordable housing. And the mid-sized towers are much more in context with the community, and the vocational school is now sort of given priority. Okay, so that summarizes the letter that we sent to the mayor. And can I see the next slide, please? Yes, so those are the alternatives. Section scenario 5 on the extreme right is what we're proposing, and if you look at scenario 4 in the middle, I don't know if is that showing up. Can you go to the next slide, please? Yes. So scenario 4 in the middle has Co-op Tech and the high schools, but now the tower is much lower. So, people will always ask the question, well, what if we did have the two high schools there? There'd be a trade-off, and that's very clear. Okay, and on the extreme left, as I mentioned, is the scenario that we're recommending. So I'm going to conclude, and I'm going to conclude so the important thing to note is that what is holding up this project after more, we went through litigation, we did the appeal, the Article 78 appeal, and we lost that appeal. But the judge did say two things. He said the playground is parkland and had been parkland. And therefore, therefore the replacement has to occur, and that was part of the state alienation law, section 2, which says that the replacement has to be found of equivalent market value, and so far, no replacement has been acceptable yet. And I know that, or we are aware that there was a replacement parkland suggested at 125th Street, but that was budgeted long ago, and it wouldn't afford a playing field. So we're still waiting for that section 2 to be satisfied, and that's the reason why it's now taken more than 5 years to get this project off the road. And what we're trying to say is, let's look at some alternatives. Let's try to find some area of agreement. And so I would finally say that we would be willing, the coalition would be willing to meet with individuals from the land use committee and the parks committee, and explain our views in greater detail. And we are open to discussing other alternatives. And so we hope that there can be a meaningful dialogue going forward. That's sort of the end of my presentation, and I'm open to questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Van der Valk, for your presentation and for presenting alternatives. I just want to clarify that the Community Board 11 took a position and supported the ECF project based on certain understandings in terms of support for, at the very minimum, 2 East Harlem schools, which was the Heritage School and the Park East High School. ECF came to us a couple of months ago stating that the project had removed those schools and was looking for alternative locations and funding so they can build those schools, not as part of this project. I will let you know that myself and others on this board took the position that that is not a position that we support. Community Board 11 at that time and at this time is looking for those 2 schools to still be part of this project, and that ECF finds the funding that it needs to ensure that what was originally promised and got them the approvals from Community Board 11 is what they are held up to, those standards. So a scenario such as the one you mentioned that may include the 2 other high schools I just mentioned might be something that may be attractive to ECF once they come back to the board to present their plans to incorporate what was described to them as outrage from this community board.
Yes.
Finding out that those 2 schools were removed.
Can I pipe in? Can I make a comment?
Sure.
Yeah. Yes, it's the coalition's view that if Avalon Day is being let off the hook to fund, essentially to construct the 2 high schools, then as a counter move, wouldn't it be appropriate to consider that the park land should be restored? I mean, if you can be let off the hook for a very important component of the project, then it seems justified that the parkland should be restored as a fair counterbalance. And also, if you look at the middle scenario, you see the blue on the right. Those are the high schools, and so the tower is now smaller because the high schools are restored, and those high schools, you know, could be funded by the city separately, but the development rights or the development, the FAR would still have to come from the project. So that's the way we would need to look at any future scenarios. So I thought I would throw that in for clarification.
Thank you so much. With any city funding that comes to our location, there's always the question when one project has been promised a certain way to help for the community, and then it's discussed or monies all of a sudden become a sticking point. When we look at city funds to maybe replace what was promised, we then have to wonder what projects that we may need will be put on the back burner just to ensure that these projects happen, that the developer still gets a benefit from. Their plans still don't change, but yet the community is the one that gets shortchanged. So, you know, that's something that we at Community Board 11 take very seriously, and we will be looking at it. And having your presentation gives us food for thought. And with that, I'm going to look to see if there are any questions for you, Mr. Vandervalk, so that then I can move it forward. I see there's a hand up, Jessica Morris.
Thank you, Nilsa. And thank you, Lo, for representing on behalf of the consortium. I know there's a lot of folks and a lot of effort behind envisioning alternatives. My question is, on what grounds is this to be considered? I mean, I think are we not past this?
Well, I think the grounds are that, you know, we don't have any power other than to insist that the coalition has no power other than to insist that Section 2 be satisfied. So there is sort of a semi-legal hook, if you will, that keeps us in the dialogue, and therefore, you know, Section 2 could be satisfied by reverting the alienation process so that the playground remains as parkland. Then you know, that is what we would prefer, and also then we would have no real difference, and we would leave it up to the community boards or other actors in the community to specify what the project should include. I would say, yeah, so that's, you know, that's in essence my answer.
So yeah. just to clarify and confirm, and I have a follow-up question, Nilsa, if that's okay. So the grounds on which this is still essentially in play is quote, Section 2 of the lawsuit.
No, yes, no, okay, Section 2 of the Alienation Act.
Section 2 of the Alienation Act is what is still a point of question in the confirmed development plan.
Correct.
But
that has to be satisfied before any construction or demolition can start.
My general reading from these alternative scenarios is that the bulk and mass of the tower in the existing plan that satisfies the conditions upon which the community board gave its approval some number of years ago is not tenable for the coalition, that there is an objection that reduces bulk, reduces height, and reduces number of affordable units as a preference in the scenarios presented here. I'm just trying to understand what you're presenting and how that is still relevant or not.
Yes, that's correct. In other words, because our alternative does away with section 2 because it reverses the alienation process and it restores the playground as parkland. And then we're saying, what could you do then? And that's what scenario 5 shows. In scenario 4 and 5 show what the alternatives are if the high schools are included or if they're not included. That's what's possible with the FAR that we're given.
Thank you.
Oh, are there any more questions regarding this presentation? I see none from the committee. Let me see. I see a hand from an attendee. Give me 1 second so I can recognize you. Jewel Jones.
Thank you. So I just want to chime in and say that as one who's on the board when this was first introduced, thank you very much, Nilsa, for enlightening everybody and reminding everybody, because I'm still in agreement with that original decision by the board. Thank you, Jessica, for chiming in as well. And I just had a question. Is this project as a whole within the confines of Community Board 11 as a whole? And anyone, I don't know, whoever can answer that, I'd like to hear the answer to that.
If I may, yes, the answer to that is yes.
And then in terms of CB8's input and your input in terms of your organization, while we're all listening to your input, I have to harken back to my original comment that the board had a decision, we made a decision, and I'm all for the board's decision, maintaining that decision. So just wanted to clarify that and just make that statement. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jules. I see one hand is back up in the panelist section. And if there is no question after that, then after this question, I will then put this presentation to bed. So Beverly Pabon, you have the last question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lowe, for your presentation and showing us your concerns and scenarios. My question to you is, excluding the park area / playground that's in Community Board 11, what do Community Board 8 have any park grounds or playgrounds within your district?
Yes. There is actually another playground. And by the way, these playgrounds are called jointly operated playgrounds, meaning they are managed by both the Parks Department and the Department of Education. There is another, they're called JOPs, jointly operated.
Right.
There's another playground very nearby at the corner of Lexington and 96th Street. And that has the famous basketball courts where everybody plays in the summer. It's a very playground. And that could potentially become a development site, just as this playground has been sacrificed for the development. So there are other playgrounds in Community Board 8, St. Catherine's around 75th Street and First Avenue, and between First and Second Avenue. And there's the Rupert Playground, which doesn't have a ball field. And so there are various smaller, in fact, but this is perhaps the only playground in the common area, if I say common area, with a ball field. And because so many people from Community Board 8 use this playground, just as so many people from Community Board 11 use the playground at 96th and Lexington. Playgrounds are open to everyone, and so they're a common asset. Yep, so I hope that answers the question, but, so this is the only bowl field, if you will, inside the proper of the Upper East Side. For the rest, you have to go to Randall's Island or Central Park, which is a long distance.
Okay, thank you so very much.
Okay, I had said, Beverly, that yours was the last question, but I would be remiss in not letting our Parks Chair as well as the Vice Chair of the entire Community Board 11 ask a question. I wouldn't be able to sleep tonight if I did that. So Jessica Elliott.
Thank you so much, Madam Vice Chair. And thank you, Lo, for your presentation. You know, it's unfortunate the sequence of events that, you know, we wish we would have heard this earlier before the previous motion. But I do agree, and I want you to be aware that I do agree with the playground in the park being maintained as a JOP. If there's, you know, I'm not sure, we can lean on George and Angel and others to help us understand what the best path forward would be to including that in a future statement or motion for regarding this project. And I do agree that your placement of the playground in, you know, not in between the buildings makes the most sense. So I'm not sure what the process would be to continue this conversation with ECF. I'm sure they'll be back and that we can, you know, clarify our intentions with and these sort of additional comments with them as we move forward together. Thank you so much, Lo.
Yeah, thank you, Jessica.
I just want to clarify, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Jessica. The park on 96 in Lexington is a CB11 park. Is that not so?
Yes, it is. I think so.
No, that's CB8.
Oh, sorry, this playground.
96 in Lexington?
96 in Lexington's on the south side of the street at CB8.
Okay, sorry.
All right, I just wanted to clarify that because a question popped up over here on my end.
Yeah. So both community boards districts share these two playgrounds. I think that's the bottom line.
Okay, so one is more under CB8's management and one is CB11, which is the one that we are under discussion in this project.
Correct.
So thank you so much again for your presentation. I see no more hands. So I want to thank you for coming and sharing your thoughts and your renderings. And it's something that we will definitely keep in mind as we deal with ECF and the proposed project, whether it changes and whether we can have input in terms of changes we'd like to see other than the schools that we are adamant need to be included. We will definitely have those conversations. So again, I want to thank you again for taking the time, and I want to thank the committee for asking such thoughtful questions.
And
thank you so much.
Thank you again for allowing this presentation. Much appreciated.
You're welcome, sir. And again, we thank you for taking the time to come and speak with us. With that, that is the end of our two presentations. We're going to move along on the agenda. Is there any old business? I have no old business except to say that we had discussed when ECF came and had a discussion with us about proposed changes. At that time, I believe it was myself and others who made a suggestion that we consider when these things happen, going on the record to clarify when we are taking a different position on an existing position that had been done before, especially if it's because of changes to the original presentations and what we voted on. So while we're not going to really discuss that tonight, I just wanted to put it out there that to please think about that. That had come up in another meeting, and I'm sure Chair Villanueva, when he comes, will talk about that and any other old business he thinks is pertinent. I see Jessica Morris has both hands raised. So she has actually 3 hands raised now. So I'm going to recognize Jessica so that she can let us know what she's thinking. Jessica?
Thank you, Nilsa. 2 actual hands, 1 digital hand.
All 3 of them.
Yeah, all 3 of them, and a smile to boot. Nilsa, I think with regard to your statement in suggesting that if positions change, or if projects change and positions stay the same, I guess that's my question. If time goes by, enough time goes by where it seems prudent for the board to reassert their original position, I think that's where we're at now. And you've, made a believer out of me, even though, we see, okay, more sunlight is good, but I think the, hearing from Jewel and kind of being reminded of that process does, we're not being asked for anything at this point other than to stay engaged. But that being said, we, can we reassert that position taking and kind of re-up the ante and make sure that we are, as a board, committed to that position going forward? Is there value in that? Especially as so much time goes by, and when it's such a contentious and challenging and transformative, potential project.
I think that there's always value in what you say. I think that the danger with community boards is that as people change and projects linger, that we forget our original positions and what we voted on, and then we have a new set of people and historical information is lost. I think that we as a land use committee may not necessarily need ECF to come back next month, let's say, to present. It's enough that they came and they spoke with us. We can request a presentation. And if we feel that we want to discuss and assert what was within the last presentation and ask some probing questions with the goal of a resolution, reinforcing what we voted for and the reasons why we think that's still valid and our unchanging opinions, so that then we could present to the full board under an informational session and familiarize the full board in understanding what was the original position, what has changed, what has been presented to this community, and why we are standing firm in our asks. I think there's always value in that. And I think that that is something that as we write the minutes up and Jason reviews this tape, that he can then formulate that for, let's say, next month's agenda. And maybe the executive committee and others with input can come up with a good plan if that is something that the board finds value in. I certainly feel that that's very valuable.
If I might just, and I agree, and I think it's the time to act is when you're not under pressure, and I feel like that's we've done the work, and to kind of recommit to that position can be really powerful. And I also want to acknowledge that our local hiring statement that we point to is 10 years old. It's a Matthew Washington 2013 era statement that I have brought up in conversation, and I say it here because this committee tends to point to it a lot, and I think there is potential value in doing that work and re-upping the ante and the commitment to making sure that case remains strong as we move into the next phase of what is in the pipeline for East Harlem. So even though the position has not changed and the project essentially has not changed, I would say that consistency is as important to get on the record as is when things change. So thank you, Nilsa.
Thank you, Jessica. I quite agree. I see that Angel Muscane has his little yellow hand up. Angel? I
disagree. The position that the board took way back on the ECF project was a position on a project that was presented that had different details than the project that we're anticipating now. In the last few months, we've heard that Avalon Bay is off the hook for paying for those two additional, the heritage, the school building that will house Heritage and Park East. So reasserting a position that that was pointing at a project where Avalon Bay still had the responsibility to build and pay for those two school buildings. So in essence, the project is different now. So reasserting support for something that has changed under our feet, I think is not just inadvisable, I think it would be a mistake. I think the board was presented something that wasn't completely all detailed out when the board voted in 2017. And then I think predictably the details changed over time. And frankly, if it weren't for our neighbors to the south getting involved, that building would have been up already. And I think that their involvement is something that we should be glad for, because it bought us time to be able to see some of those finer details that were not clearly presented to us when this board voted on it in 2017. So I don't think that reaffirming a position as it currently sits, as it currently exists, based on what was presented at that time, would be a good idea. If you all wanted to take, however, if you all wanted to take another position or a refined position, of course, that's within your purview to do just that. Nobody can, keep you from doing that. That's all. I think that's, reasonable. But reaffirming a position on something that is shifted under your feet, that I don't think that's advisable.
Angel, when I agreed with Jessica in terms of an original decision, I think that what I meant, right, was not all the specifics, because as you know, Jennifer came and presented quite a different scenario, wanted funding from different scenario. When I say about affirming, I mean the fact that the 2 schools that were added into this project should be included within this project. It should not cost our community any funds that may have been earmarked for another project here. I think that we need to find a way to ensure that ECF, however it does it, gives us, or we affirm the fact that we are still looking for certain things that were mentioned in the original project, that we are still looking for here. The concern for me is, because I work with land, that it's very difficult to get land here in East Harlem, and to find land, suitable buildings for 2 schools is going to be difficult. We've been having sanitation problems forever. So when I talk about affirming the original, I don't mean it in totality. I mean it in terms of give us the schools. That's what you said. And we can talk about everything else, but don't come up with a different scenario, because that was never discussed as part of that. So thank you you're absolutely right in terms of us affirming a position that's not tenable in the change in details. But I think that the schools is something that we definitely will continue, or should continue, to question and hold their feet to the fire. Beverly?
Yes, I'm still a newbie to this whole process. So I'm asking for historical information. Has there ever been a project that had this much problems in getting off its, that changed so much in the past? And when something like this happened, what is the solution if we have the developer taking away things that they said they was going to give us, and in exchange for us giving them something? Do they get to keep it? So what is our take on this? On how do we go forward when we come to a problem like this? I don't know if this is unique to Community Board 11, of having a project like this come up, and the developer has to change things because it took more time to develop this project because of a lawsuit or something like that. How do you go forward, or do we have any options to pull everything back? Or this is so, it seems unique.
Well, the community board supported this project.
I remember.
Things change. Many different things can affect the project. Whether we can take something back or not, I don't know whether it's advisable to take something back, even if we could. The question is, when something changes that the community was expecting, even if it's delayed, how much can the community board or anybody in the community insist that it gets put back in a project? That is the question. That is why it was raised. Jennifer came and did a presentation, and I think in good faith, she did a presentation. And I think she's honestly trying to get us answers. So I don't want to speak about other developments and what we can do, because that's not germane right now. We do
Okay.
not have answers from ECF in terms of what this project could look like or what funding. I know that she said a good faith effort. She was going to try to find something. I'm going to ask Angel if he would like to mention anything. But like I said, ECF came in with a presentation and explained why certain things had to change. And we gave our thoughts about potentially adding something back. And she went to go look at alternatives. And she has not come back. I'm sure she's been in communication. And so I think that those questions are better asked once she's presenting, so that we can then see what, if anything, has changed and what we're looking at as a community. Angel?
Sure. So in terms of like projects changing after land use action, sure, all the time and everywhere. So we're certainly not unique in that
Okay.
in that condition. But insofar as like board positions on projects, right? Because a land use application is one thing, and a project is germane to the land use application, but not the land use application, right? So in terms of like commenting on a project, and I know I always sound sarcastic, but I'm not trying to be sarcastic. You can always issue positions and refine your positions and give clarification, like to your heart's content. And if it makes sense to you all and you all reach consensus on wanting to communicate this or that, absolutely and certainly. And I think that the lesson learned from like things shifting all the time is that we have to be vigilant all the time, because it's when we're not being vigilant that things could change, and then by the time we hear about it again, it's changed, right? So in this instance, if it's a matter of like there are certain principles in this project that appeal to the board and got the board to support the project, but now things have shifted around and you want to reassert that these principles are still important to us even though the details changed, sure. But my point earlier was that the position taken previously supported a 63-story building, supported the transfer of development rights from that park, right? And as we discussed a couple of months ago with ECF, now that Avalon Bay no longer has to pay for that, the argument for the argument that the development rights are needed for the tower kind of washed away because they no longer have to pay for that, right? So for that reason, I would hesitate to advise you all to reaffirm the position that you took in 2017, because the details, very important details, have changed dramatically, even though like the kind of the front page principles are still there, right? Co-op tech, affordable housing, heritage, Park East, new park. That's the front. It's behind that. It's those details that are the concerning aspects of this project. So I'm incapable of giving a short answer. But yes, you can always do another letter. But I would strongly discourage you all from just restamping the previous position.
It's like anything, right? This committee has to have thoughtful discussion and come to a consensus of sorts whenever we draft anything that will live on in perpetuity, or as long as we keep records. So this would be, we can go on and taking questions. I see there's 2 more questions. I will, but I will tell you that nothing is going to be resolved tonight. This is a discussion potentially for old business next month. This might be something that can be looked at by the committee and looking at the original decision and what we supported so that we know what we're talking about, right? So that it's not like what I'm remembering and what I'm mentioning. It might be a very small portion. I'm sorry. It may be a very small portion of what the community board agreed to. So if this is really important, and I think it is for me as a lifelong member of this community, but if you all think that this is important and it's something that this committee should look at, and as Angel prefaced, there was a lot of changes, there was a tower, there was a lot of things that might be no longer reasonable to continue to support because of the devil in the details. If that is something that you all think that you want to discuss and bring up as part of old business next month, then I would ask that you look at what the original motion and support was and resolution from this community board for that project. Because as we know, they are going to come before us again. And if we want to modify our positions based on the changes that Angel has indicated, then we need to know what we're talking about. Oftentimes, it's very frustrating when we don't do the work, when we talk from memory, or we don't read the materials given to us, and then we opine in such a way that it makes it seem obvious that we are not as informed as we should be. So if this is a point to discuss next month, let us look to the original decision and what the project was about so that we can understand the changes when they're presented to us. With that, I'll take the last two hands and then I'm going to table it because this should be a short meeting and it is looking like it is not. So Jessica Morris.
Thank you, Nilsa. I appreciate you taking the time to have the discussion when we had a bit of time to be able to do that. And I just want to clarify that I was not advocating rubber stamping anything. So I appreciate the pushback. It ultimately leaves us in a better place. And Angel, you gave words to my question, which, and I think this is what Beverly was getting at, projects changing after land use action. How much change means the ULURP is moot? And I think, you know, there's legal documentation in the description of the program, what is being described as the approved land use action, and that's changed. I think the response that we got from George when I asked that question initially is it's insignificant as far as ULURP is concerned. So, you know, and maybe Nilsa, in your charge to do our homework before, you know, we come back to the table to continue to have this discussion, to revisit the responses of those questions and continue to ask those questions of how are, you know, how is the deal changing? And, you know, we're essentially being at risk of being left behind. And there's no recourse to action, ultimately, is kind of where the dismay comes from. So thank you for entertaining the question. What amount of change after land use action invalidates the ULURP? And I think the answer is there really is no measure on that. And there probably should be. So thank you.
I'm not speaking for anyone. I'm just speaking from my my general sense. Once a ULURP action happens and it gets voted on, that ULURP action is approved based with whatever conditions the community board and others have imposed and comments. It doesn't, the community can always look back at something that it voted on and sometimes have buyer's remorse or other feelings. But I think that once a ULURP action is done, a ULURP action is done. Whether there are other things that can affect and create a new situation for commenting, such as this one, I think, is the question. Am I correct, Angel, in terms of the ULURP? Once the ULURP is done, and it is approved by the mayor, it is
Yes.
done.
Sorry, Neil, so if I could just clarify, I'm not talking about the position taking so much as the technical stuff that's written in the actual land use application. That
Okay.
the stuff in there has changed and the positions have not, but the stuff of the application has fundamentally changed. And that's where I have issue and there's no recourse to action here.
Mhm. Angel, would you like to opine?
Yeah, sure. No, I understood Jessica's question. So yeah, so like if it's a rezoning, for example, right? Once the rezoning is approved, right, now you have this volume of what you can do within that volume. If you do less, nothing changes. I see Jose's hand up, so I'm gonna stop because he's an actual planner and he can help us out here before I stick my foot in my mouth. Jose?
Hi, Angel. And sorry, I'm off camera, but I'm outside, so maybe you hear some background noise. I think you were going in the right place, and Angela, I was just going to intervene to say essentially the same. Like there are things that must be completed as part of the approval. That is usually recorded in a notice of restrictions or a legal document, essentially. Which will have very clear language of what needs to be done. We do typically this, with the type of use that's going to be located in the area or something that is particularly granted through a permit that it gets memorialized. In terms of ULURP, as Angel was mentioning, so if that wasn't recorded in either the text amendment or the the legal document that it was, they essentially could do less than that. But if there were any permits granted that have specific conditions, for example, in this case, we have been looking at this case because the applicant has also reached out to us, looking at the implications of what a potential change might look like. You do have very specific text about how much floor area you can use for a certain point to another point. If a percentage of the open space is being provided, being covered. So, looking at to what extent either a modification to the, existing approval will be necessary, or essentially what what we call a substantial compliance, right? So to see if they are within something that we can do the changes in-house, essentially a DCP through kind of like a certification process, but it's called a substantial compliance, or if they will have to go back through ULURP when there's a major change or a minor mod to the specific application. And this is what essentially is going to happen in here, because the developer didn't get a certificate of occupancy or a temporary certificate of occupancy of this. So they will have to, essentially, when they submit the paperwork to the Department of Buildings, there will be some type of discrepancy on what they can build and what was proposed. So they will, they need to update those. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say. And then also I wanted to introduce Trevor Lawitz, who is our new Upper Manhattan Community Board 10 and 11 planner. He's in the call as an attendee right now, but we're going to be coming back to the Housing Committee and a couple other meetings with Trevor to introduce ourselves in camera this time.
Okay.
Thank you for the answer, Jose.
Thank you so much. Angel, do you want to add anything, or was what Jose said sufficient?
No. He's the expert, buddy.
Okay.
That's
No,
why I
I'm just
deferred.
asking if you had an opinion.
Jose is wrong.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding.
Okay, so with that, I'm going to see if there are any more questions. I'm glad that Jose was wrong, but was wrong with us, so that we can all be wrong together. I don't see any more questions unless I am missing something. With no questions, I'm moving on to new business. Well, new business might be what we were discussing as old business, the ECF project, depending if you all do your homework and it's something that you want to discuss with Chair Villanueva when he comes next month and put it as an agenda item, then that would consistently fall into new business for me. I am now going to, unless there's anything else, Angel, do you have anything to add for new business? If not, then you can feel free to call the roll.
I do not. Committee members, when I call your name, please answer present. Devin Cronshaw is excused. Kenneth Crouch.
Present.
Jessica Elliott.
Present.
Jessica Morris.
Present.
Nelson Orama.
Present.
Beverly Pavon.
Shalom and present.
Benny Torres.
Presente.
And Candy Vasquez.
Present.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, with that, it is now 8:25. I did my best to get you out in a timely fashion. I want to thank you all for the lively discussions as part of the presentations today. I want to thank George, although he was very quiet and silent, for attending our meeting. And with that, I wish you all good health and a good night. And with that, I close the meeting at 8:26. Thank you all so much.
Shalom, shalom, everyone. Be safe, be well. Talk
Night,
later.
everyone.